Five working-class kids stormed the charts in 1964 with a 4-minute, one-take anthem that outsold all but the Beatles, making them the first British band to hit #1 in America on their own terms. But the label on that record credited just one name, and a manager's offshore promise turned their fortune into thin air. How could millions of dollars and the closest brotherhood vanish overnight? The answer begins in a London studio. It gets uglier from here. On May 18th, 1964, 5 young men from Newcastle crowded into Delane Lee's studios in London. The clock was ticking, the budget was tight, and nobody expected a miracle. Eric Burdon gripped the microphone, Hilton Valentine's fingers hovered over his Gretsch guitar, and Alan Price settled behind the organ. Mickey Most, their producer, watched from the control room, betting his reputation on a song that ran 4 minutes and 40 seconds, almost 2 minutes longer than radio would normally allow. The band had rehearsed the arrangement only a handful of times, but when the red light went on, they played as if their lives depended on it. One take. That was all it took. Valentine's arpeggiated guitar riff set the tone. Price's swirling organ filled the studio, and Burdon's voice cut through with a rawness that sounded like it had been dredged straight from the Tyne. When the tape stopped, nobody spoke. Most pressed for the entire song to be released, refusing to cut it down for radio. EMI executives balked, but most would not budge. By July, House of the Rising Sun was #1 in the UK. On September 5th, it topped the American charts, holding the spot for 3 weeks. Nearly 5 million copies sold worldwide, a number only the Beatles could match at the time. For the first time, a British band outside the Beatles' shadow had conquered America. In that moment, the Animals were united, unstoppable, and on top of the world. The money was supposed to change everything. Instead, it tore the band apart before they even had a chance to enjoy it. When the first pressing of House of the Rising Sun hit stores, the 45 RPM label carried a single name beside the word arranger, Alan Price. Management insisted there was not space for 5 names, promising the others that the royalties would be divided fairly later. That promise never meant anything. In the world of music publishing, the arranger credit on a traditional song like House of the Rising Sun was the key to a lifetime of royalties. Every time the record spun on the radio, every time a jukebox blared those opening notes, the money flowed to Price, and Price alone. Eric Burdon, Hilton Valentine, Chas Chandler, and John Steele got paid as if they were hired hands. They were paid session fees, nothing more. The band's own drummer, John Steele, remembered being told directly, "It will all be sorted out, do not worry." But the arrangement locked them out for good. Price collected checks for decades, while the rest watched the song they built together turn into a private fortune for one man. The resentment was instant and permanent. Chandler later called it a crumb-bum move. Burdon never forgave the betrayal. The wound never healed. The moment of triumph became the start of a fracture that would never close. Mike Jeffrey was the kind of manager who left no paper trail and answered questions with a grin. Before the Animals, he had served in the British Intelligence Corps and ran Newcastle's notorious club Agogo, where the band first cut their teeth. To the outside world, Jeffrey seemed like the man who could turn working-class grit into gold. But inside the Animals camp, suspicion grew with every missing pound. When the band split in September 1966, each member believed they were owed £40,000, a fortune for 5 kids from the Tyne. Chas Chandler, never one to let things lie, booked a ticket to the Bahamas. Jeffrey had always insisted the money was safe in an offshore account ready for them when the time was right. Chandler arrived in Nassau with an address scrawled on a scrap of paper. The bank, if it ever existed, was gone. No records, no accounts, no trace. Just heat, humidity, and the realization that their earnings had vanished into thin air. Jeffrey's methods were not sloppy, they were calculated. He set up offshore companies like Yamita, funneled the band's royalties through a maze of shell accounts, and kept the details locked away. When pressed, he would charm or deflect. Chandler later said, "He was a crook. There is no question about that. He was totally charming, great fun, and he would steal from my grandmother. The animals had sold millions, but the vault was empty. The real money, the reward for all those nights on the road, was as unreachable as the bank that disappeared in the Caribbean sun." Alan Price's departure hit like a hammer blow one morning in May 1965. Just as the band was gearing up for a major European tour, Price was gone. No warning, no farewell. The official story blamed his fear of flying, but nobody in the band bought it. Chas Chandler, never one to mince words, spat out, "He must have got his first royalty check." Bitterness hung in the air. Eric Burdon's anger never cooled. Years later, he still called it unforgivable. "This asshole walks away and leaves us just before we're about to go on a major tour of Europe." The scramble to replace Price was frantic. The band had commitments, promoters, fans, a reputation to defend. Dave Roberry stepped in on keyboards, but the old chemistry was gone. The brotherhood that had survived the grind of Newcastle clubs and endless miles on the road was shattered. Every night on stage, the absence of Price was a wound that would not close. For the remaining members, the sense of betrayal cut deeper than any business dispute. Money might have started the fire, but pride and trust fueled the blaze. The Animals' rise from the shipyards to the top of the charts had been built on the idea that they were in it together. Now, with Price's abrupt exit, that idea was finished. The scars from that split would linger for decades, shaping every reunion, every interview, and every memory. "We gotta get out of this place," thundered out of radios in 1965, climbing to number 2 in the UK, and breaking into the top 20 in America. The song's desperate chorus struck a nerve far beyond Newcastle or London. By the late 1960s, it became the unofficial anthem of American soldiers in Vietnam. A University of Wisconsin-Madison study, decades later, found veterans in complete agreement. Every band in every base camp played it. The Animals' music outlasted the band that made it. Eric Burdon refused to let the story end in silence. In 1966, he rebuilt the group in California, pushing into psychedelic rock. They stormed the Monterey Pop Festival alongside Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. San Franciscan Nights reached number 9 in the US. Sky Pilot ran over 7 minutes, so long it had to be split across both sides of a single. Rolling Stone later ranked We Gotta Get Out of This Place at number 233 of all time. The songs kept moving, even as the brotherhood behind them fell apart. Attempts to heal old wounds always ended in fresh scars. During the 1983 reunion tour, Chas Chandler put a proposal on the table: share House of the Rising Sun royalties equally from that moment forward. Alan Price's answer, as Eric Burdon remembered it, was blunt. He stood up and said, "Go fuck yourself," and left the room. The bitterness never faded. When the Animals were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1994, Burdon skipped the ceremony, choosing a club gig in Dusseldorf over standing beside his former bandmates. Even the band's name became a battlefield. In 2008, a British court granted John Steele the exclusive right to use the Animals in the UK, shutting Burdon out until an appeal in 2013 finally let him use it again. Chas Chandler died in 1996. Hilton Valentine died in 2021. Alan Price died the same year. Never a public apology, never a settlement. House of the Rising Sun has been covered over 1,000 times and streamed billions. Rolling Stone ranked it number 123 of all time. The song endures. The Brotherhood did not. Millions still sing the songs, but the men behind them never saw justice or peace. Today, music streaming generates billions, yet artists fight the same battles for credit and royalties. The legacy endures, but so does the warning. In rock and roll, betrayal is never just history.